Sunday is the one day you don't work the land, but that doesn't mean you rest. It means you go to church. And if you don't, if someone notices, you become the subject of whispers, suspicion, and eventually punishment. Not by law, but by people. You get fewer trades, less help, fewer nods. And before long, your name becomes the kind that people avoid saying at all. So you go, the church is cold. Stone walls, no windows, the same air as a cellar, thick, damp, heavy with incense and breath. You sit on a rough wooden bench that cuts into your spine. You kneel until your knees ache, not out of piety, but because everyone else is doing it and you're afraid to be different. Everything is in Latin, the prayers, the chants, the scripture. You don't understand a single word. The priest says you don't need to, that God speaks through him, that obedience is faith and questioning is sin. You were never taught to read. Books are chained to walls and guarded. They are property, not knowledge. The Bible is a book you've never touched, never opened, never even seen up close. It might as well be written in the stars. You learn from images. Carvings, paintings, the fire, the devils, the weeping sinners, that's enough. That's what you know. Hell waits for the disobedient. And heaven, well, you're told it's beautiful, but it's never described by anyone who's been there. The priest talks about sin like it's everywhere. He says laughter is dangerous, that women must stay silent, that suffering is God's plan to test you. You sit there, coughing into your sleeve, ribs showing through your tunic, and wonder how many more tests you're supposed to pass before he lets up. But you say nothing, you cross your chest, you bow your head, because doubt is its own kind of crime. You bring offerings, if you have any, eggs, grain, a coin if you're lucky. You put them in the collection box. The priest blesses them, then locks the box with a key you'll never touch. He says it's for the poor. You are the poor, you never see it again. Sometimes you feel nothing, no connection, no presence, just fear. Fear of being punished here and fear of being punished after. And in a life with no justice, the promise of hell is strangely believable, because at least that would mean someone's keeping score. You leave the church colder than you came in. The sermon fades before you reach the road, but the guilt lingers, so does the fear. And so next Sunday you'll be back again, not because you believe, but because belief stopped being the point a long time ago. Back at home, the work hasn't stopped. It never does. Your wife hasn't been to church in weeks, not because she doesn't want to, but because someone has to stay and keep the fire going, and someone has to make sure the baby doesn't roll into it. She doesn't complain, she doesn't ask. She just moves from one task to the next, from baking bread to washing a sick child to scrubbing ashes from the only pot you own. Her hands are cracked and red from the heat and the cold. Her back stays bent even when she's standing. She hasn't sat down properly since last winter, and even then she was sewing. She doesn't own land, she doesn't sign anything, and she doesn't speak at the village meetings. But she controls everything inside your one-room house: food, warmth, health, order, and without her, the whole thing would collapse in a day. Marriage wasn't her choice. She was promised, like a debt paid with flesh. She was 14. You were 19, that was normal. She had your first child before her hips were done growing. It tore her. She bled for days. No one called it danger. They called it womanhood. She's given birth 3 times. One child didn't survive the second winter. The others did, but barely. She blames herself quietly even now, but she doesn't say it. She doesn't say much of anything unless it's about chores or sickness. She used to sing. You don't remember when she stopped. The children aren't children, not really. By age 5, they're expected to work, gathering firewood, chasing chickens, picking weeds, fetching water. They don't have toys, not unless you count bones, sticks, or the occasional rag doll sewn from scraps. They don't go to school. They don't read. They know how to stay quiet when adults are tired and how to run if the pig escapes again. That's enough. Your son has calluses on his palms and dirt behind every fingernail. He's 7. Your daughter already knows how to knead dough and carry water without spilling. She's 6. Their knees are always bruised, their clothes always ripped. Their hair never fully clean. They get bit by fleas in their sleep just like you, but they scratch and go on. No whining, no questions, because they've already learned that in this world, pain isn't unusual, it's expected. Your wife taught them that, not because she wanted to, but because if she didn't, someone else would, and worse. There's no rest for them, no softness, no magic, only rules and repetition and survival. They don't dream of being kings or knights. They dream of full stomachs, of dry straw, of winter not coming early, and that's what breaks you the most, not the labor, not the hunger. But the fact that even your children have stopped hoping for more. Winter doesn't arrive all at once, it creeps in. First the wind changes, then the sun disappears faster each day, the mud hardens. The nights stretch longer than you remember, and suddenly one morning you wake up and the ground is stiff, your breath is a cloud, and the water barrel is ice. That's when you know it's here, and you're not ready, you're never ready. The firewood you've gathered isn't enough, it never is. You counted each log, you tried to make them last, but wood burns faster than hunger fades, so you ration it. 1 fire a day, maybe 2 if someone's sick. The rest of the time you huddle together, wrapped in rags and blankets that stink of old smoke and damp straw. You breathe shallow to keep the cold from cutting your throat. Your fingers go numb, then your toes. You stop noticing after a while until they start turning black. You eat less, much less. The root cellar is nearly empty by December. The grain is down to handfuls. The bread is thinner, the gruel more watery. You start skipping meals so the children can eat. You chew slower to trick your stomach into thinking there's more. But your stomach knows, it always knows. People die in winter, quietly, without drama. They go to sleep and don't wake up. Or they cough until they bleed, or they just stop moving. Old people go first, then the babies, sometimes even the strong ones. Frost gets into the lungs, into the bones, into the blood. And when it settles, no prayer, no herb, no warmth can push it back out. You hear coughing from the house next door. You don't visit. You send a nod through the wall, maybe a small loaf if you have one, but you don't go over. You don't want to bring death into your own hut. Every sound outside becomes a question. Was that someone crying? Was that a scream? Did someone else freeze? You don't ask, you just listen. And you hope it's not coming from your own roof next. The church bell still rings, but fewer people go. The ground is too hard to dig graves, so sometimes the dead stay inside for days, wrapped, cold, waiting. Your children sleep curled into your chest. They don't talk much anymore. Their lips are cracked. Their skin is dry. You warm their feet with your hands before bed, but it doesn't help. Nothing really does. You count the days, but the calendar means nothing now. It's just cold and then more cold and then hopefully maybe something warmer. You've survived other winters, but each time it costs you something. A tooth, a finger, a name. A part of your mind, and you know deep down that one year the cold will take more than that. It'll take everything. When you die, there won't be a procession. No hymns, no stone, no carved name. Just a hole in the ground, shallow and fast, dug before the soil freezes again. You won't be buried in a coffin. Wood is too valuable. Maybe you'll be wrapped in an old cloth, maybe not. Maybe your body is just lowered in with a rope and covered with the same dirt you spent your life breaking apart. People won't talk about you much, not because they didn't care, but because they have to keep going. They have their own fields to plow, their own sick to feed, their own fire to keep burning. There's no time for grief, no room for it. A few words from the priest if he shows up, a muttered Latin phrase. You won't understand it, but you're not expected to. You're already gone. There's no family inheritance. You own nothing. The clothes on your back will be passed to someone else, maybe your son, if they still fit. The blanket you died under will be shaken out and reused. The straw you slept on will be burned. The house remains, but life in it moves forward like water stepping over a stone. No one writes down your name. You're not recorded. You're not remembered in ink. If someone mentions you in 10 years, it'll be as the one who died that cold winter, or the man whose boy didn't make it past 5. That's it, your whole story reduced to a season and a shadow. And you won't be the first. The land is full of men like you, dug into its corners, unnamed, unmarked, forgotten by records but not by the soil. The soil remembers weight, not names. If you were lucky, you made it past 40. If not 25, either way your back bent the same, your hands split the same. Your skin turned pale the same way when the fever hit, and when it ends, when your breath leaves and your heart gives up, it won't feel like injustice. It'll feel like silence, a quiet you've been walking toward for years, and when it takes you, you won't fight it. Because for people like you, death isn't tragedy, it's rest. People like to say the Middle Ages were simpler times. That life back then was slow, pure, connected to the land. They say it like it's something to envy, like it was a life worth going back to, but they're only remembering the castles, the torches, the feasts held by people who never touched a plow. They don't remember the mud that never left your ankles, the smoke that filled your lungs before sunrise, the children buried without names, the women broken by childbirth at 15, the men who died with their hands still wrapped around a shovel. There was nothing simple about it. Life wasn't slow, it was relentless. Hunger didn't come once a month, it lived with you. Cold wasn't a season, it was an enemy. And death wasn't a fear, it was a routine. Every hour was earned. Every step a gamble, every winter a test. You didn't get to dream. You didn't get to plan. You got to survive, or you didn't. The people who lived this life didn't leave memoirs. They didn't write books. They didn't carve their names into history, but they built everything that came after, with broken backs and empty stomachs, with blood and calluses, with silence. So next time someone tells you they miss the good old days, ask them which part. The frostbite, the rot, the hunger that made you too tired to cry. This wasn't the romantic past. It was the world before comfort, before dignity, before choice, and most of humanity lived like this. And most of them died without anyone ever saying their name again. You think you could live in the Middle Ages? Most people today imagine it as something peaceful, riding horses across green fields, drinking ale by firelight, eating fresh bread made from wheat you grew yourself, away from phones and noise and taxes. They imagine the simple life. But if you were actually born in 13th century Europe, you'd have been born poor. Statistically, 90% of people were. You'd be a peasant and you wouldn't last 3 days. You wouldn't sleep on a mattress. You'd sleep on a pile of rotting straw that smelled like sweat, piss, mold, and rats. You'd share that straw with your entire family, inside a hut that leaked rainwater every night. You'd wake up itching from lice, scratching your arms bloody from fleas, and then walk barefoot on frozen mud to a field you don't own to grow grain you won't eat. Your breakfast, thin oat gruel if there's any left. Lunch, a piece of black barley bread so dense it could break your tooth, assuming you still had teeth. You'd work 12 hours a day, every day except Sunday, and on Sunday you'd go to church, not for comfort but to be reminded that suffering makes you holy, and that obedience keeps you out of hell. You wouldn't understand the sermon, it's in Latin. You wouldn't read a Bible peasants weren't allowed to read. You do what you're told, fear what you don't understand, and die before 50. That's not fiction. That's life for most people in medieval Europe, and in this video we're not telling a fairy tale. We're showing you what that life really looked like without the myths, without the Hollywood filter. Just the cold, the hunger, the mud, and the truth. Your home isn't a house, it's a hut. 4 walls of packed earth, a roof made of straw, and a single wooden door that doesn't lock. There's no insulation. No fireplace with stonework or chimney, just a fire pit in the middle of the room and a hole in the ceiling to let the smoke out, if it even finds the hole. Most of the time, the smoke just hangs in the air until your eyes sting and your throat burns. The roof leaks when it rains, and it always rains. There's a spot above where you sleep that drips directly onto your blanket. You know it well. You've watched mold grow along the wood right beneath it. You tried to fix it once, but the new straw you patched in rotted faster than the old. You sleep on the floor, on straw that was fresh once but now smells like damp wool and mildew. It's mixed with hair, dust, rat droppings, and the blood of squashed fleas. You share this bedding with your wife and children. There's no mattress, no sheets, just a pile of cloth rags and body heat. You wake up in the middle of the night because something bit you. Again, you scratch without thinking. Sometimes you bleed, it's normal. Everyone in the village has bites from fleas, from bedbugs, from lice. You don't even bother to chase away the rats anymore unless they get too loud. There's no bedroom. The whole house is one room. One room for sleeping, eating, storing grain, stacking tools, and hoping no one in the family dies this winter. If someone does die, the corpse stays in that room until morning, or until the weather lets you dig a hole in the frozen ground. There's no privacy. If your wife gives birth, it happens right there, while your other child watches from the corner, clutching a doll made of cloth scraps and a chicken feather. There are no windows, just slits in the wall covered in animal hide to block the wind. The smell inside, smoke, sweat, mold, wet ash, old food, never really goes away. You stop noticing it after a while. But visitors flinch when they step inside, not that there are many. The only thing worse than your own hut is someone else's. If the house doesn't break you, the food will, or the lack of it. You don't eat 3 meals a day. You eat what's available when it's available, and more often than not, that means twice a day. In the morning, your wife scrapes together what she can from the grain sack. Usually it's a thin oat gruel boiled with water. No milk, no salt. No fat, just hot, bland liquid. If you're lucky, it sticks to the spoon. If not, it runs down like warm water with a bad aftertaste. The bread, if you have bread, is dark, heavy, and hard. Made from barley or rye, mixed with whatever husks and dirt made it through the miller's screen. White bread exists, but not for you. That's for lords, clergy, and anyone who doesn't have to dig ditches to earn it. Your bread is gray. It crumbles and cuts your gums. Sometimes it smells sour because the flour turned, but you eat it anyway. You have no meat unless something dies. If a pig is slaughtered in the village, you might get some fat or skin. The meat goes to whoever paid for it. You eat roots, onions if you grew any, leeks if they didn't rot, wild herbs when you're desperate. And in winter, you chew on dried peas, old beans, or dried apple rings, the last of the harvest if they haven't molded. You salt what you can, but salt is expensive, and sometimes you just wipe the knife with ash and move on. Hunger is constant, not the sharp, sudden hunger of skipping lunch, but a dull, hollow pressure in your stomach that never fully disappears. It makes you slow, it makes your hands shake, it makes you quiet because talking burns energy. You get used to it, just like the cold, just like the fleas. You get used to being less than full. But that doesn't mean your body forgets what it needs, it just stops asking. And after you eat, if you ate, you work. That's the rule. Hunger or not, rain or not. Whether your back hurts from yesterday or your child is coughing blood in the corner, it doesn't matter. The land expects you, not your land, someone else's. You don't own anything. Not the field, not the tools, not the ox that pulls the plow. You are in every sense disposable, replaceable. You rise before the sun and walk through frozen mud or thick summer flies to reach the fields. Sometimes it's a lord's land, sometimes a monastery. Doesn't change what you do. You plow, sow, weed, harvest, carry, repeat. 12 hours or more depending on daylight, 6 days a week. Sunday is for church, and even then you don't rest. You kneel on stone floors and hope no one notices your eyes are half shut. You don't choose the crops. You plant what you're told, most often grain, barley, rye, oats. If you're lucky, wheat. Wheat is valuable, so it's watched more closely. You plow with a wooden blade fastened to a yoke. If you have an ox, you move faster. If not, you pull it yourself. Your hands blister, then bleed, then callous. Gloves are for nobility. Your nails fill with soil that never fully comes out. The soil under your nails becomes a permanent part of you, like your skin or the ache in your knees. You carry buckets of water with a yoke over your shoulders. You sharpen blades with stones. You cut yourself often. Infection is a coin toss. You get burned, get stung, get sunstroke. You don't stop, because if you stop, you fall behind. If you fall behind, your Lord notices. If your Lord notices, you're fined or punished. And the punishment isn't a warning. It's labor doubled or food halved or worse. If you complain, there's a word for you, ungrateful. If you resist, there's another word, criminal. The land is not yours, but your body is owned like it is. And when harvest comes, you owe a share, a tenth to the church, more to the landowner, and what's left, if anything, goes to your family. But even that can be taken if a debt is due, if the tax man arrives, if the weather goes bad. There is no such thing as savings. There is no such thing as stability. Each season you begin again, bent over the same earth, digging. Hoping it gives back, knowing it rarely does. You don't work to get ahead. You work so you don't die. And even that isn't guaranteed. When you come back from the fields, you don't wash. Not because you don't want to, but because there's nothing to wash with. There's no tap, no soap, no hot water. You come home with mud up your calves, sweat dried into your shirt, and your fingernails packed with soil and straw fibers, and that's how you stay. You might splash some water on your face from the barrel out back if there's any left. That water is rain, collected from the same leaking roof that covers your bed. It's yellow-gray, you don't ask why. If it doesn't smell too bad, it's good enough. Washing clothes isn't a daily thing, it isn't even weekly. Washing clothes means carrying them to the stream, rubbing them with ash or sand, then waiting days for them to dry if it doesn't rain first. And even clean clothes are only clean by your standards. They still itch. They still stink of damp fibers and smoke, but they don't have fleas, yet your body never feels truly clean, not for a single day of your life. There's always a film of something, sweat, smoke, oil, dust, that sticks. You feel it behind your knees, in the creases of your arms, along your scalp where the lice nest. You can scratch until you bleed, and it still doesn't go away. In winter, the dirt hardens into your skin. In summer, it melts into your pores. You try not to think about it. The latrine, if your village has one, is a hole in the ground shared by everyone. If not, you go outside. Behind the shed under a tree near the hedge, you wipe with leaves or straw or your hand. Then you wipe your hand on the grass. Then you go back to work. The smell never really fades. It clings to your hands, your clothes, your breath. The chickens peck around it, so do the dogs. You lose teeth early, not from fighting, not from accidents, but from rot. Your gums swell and turn purple. Your breath sours. Then one day, a tooth falls out while you're eating. It bleeds for a while. You rinse your mouth with ale if you have any. Then you keep chewing on the other side. Your feet are cracked and thick with calluses. You don't wear socks. You don't own more than one pair of shoes, and that pair is mostly holes. Your toenails turn black from frost or fungus. You walk anyway. What choice do you have? Children grow up with the same filth. Babies crawl through ash and straw, get bit by fleas before they can speak. They scratch like adults. They smell like adults. By the time they're 6, they've stopped noticing. There's no such thing as feeling clean. There's only not as filthy as yesterday. You get sick, everyone does, there's no avoiding it. The dirt gets in through your skin, through your mouth, through the cuts on your hands that never fully heal. It starts small, a cough that won't go away, a pain in your side that lingers, a rash that spreads no matter what you rub on it. You ignore it. You have to. If you stopped for every ache and fever, you'd never work again. And if you don't work, you don't eat. If you don't eat, you die. So you work through the pain. There are no doctors in your village. The rich have physicians, men who write in Latin and cut leeches into silk gloves, but they don't come here. If someone needs help, you go to the oldest woman you can find. She knows herbs. She knows which roots to boil for cramps, which leaves to crush for fever. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't, she says it wasn't meant to, and that's that. When someone gets seriously ill, real illness, the kind that keeps you in bed and takes your voice away, people whisper. Not because they care, because they're afraid. Sickness spreads, fast, and they know it. They've seen whole households die one after the other, so they stop visiting, they stop speaking to you. Sometimes they leave food at the door, sometimes they don't. You try to keep the sick warm, but the firewood runs out. You try to get them to eat, but they can't chew. You pray if you still believe in that. Mostly you wait. If they get better, they come back different, thinner, weaker. If they don't, you bury them before the ground freezes. And that's if the illness is kind. Some sicknesses are, the kind that kills children in their sleep, the kind that makes skin boil and breath smell like rot, the kind where blood runs from the mouth or from the eyes. When that happens, no one helps. People hang charms, they spit on the ground, they mark the door, the priest might come maybe, but most of the time he stays away. He has other flocks, cleaner ones. There's no such thing as recovery. There's surviving and then there's not. And when you survive, you're weaker than before, and winter is still coming. If a child dies, you wrap them in cloth and carry them out before the other children wake up. You dig fast, you say nothing. Maybe your wife cries, maybe not. Maybe she just stands there, arms crossed, waiting for you to be done. And then you go back to the field, because the weeds don't care who you lost. The harvest doesn't pause for grief. No medicine, no rest, just time. And whether it runs out before you do.